This is the Business Experience Show, where we talk to entrepreneurs about the challenges and successes of starting, owning, or operating a business.
I'm Lisa Caprelli, and with us is Brian Gapp. We are talking with Erin Coulehan. She's a writer, freelance writer, music enthusiast, and so much more. Welcome, Erin.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
What are your favorite kind of stories to write about?
Before, when I first got into this, I really enjoyed writing about music, new albums, new bands, checking out concerts, reviewing. It's great. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. But lately I've been drawn to more sort of meatier pieces. I'm attending grad school right now at Georgetown and working on my thesis, and that's centered on music, but through a sort of a mental health lens. I'm studying bipolar disorder and creativity and how it affects touring musicians. So I've been interviewing a couple bands, one in particular, Titus Andronicus, and they're working on a 30-song double album about bipolar disorder and how it affects the lead singer. His name is Patrick, and every sort of relationship that he's had. So what's interesting is seeing his writing process and how his creativity is affected, and how he interacts socially when he's manic and when he's depressive, and me kind of just being able to go along for the ride and take readers down this rabbit hole. That's what I really enjoy, is telling a story that most people might not be aware of.
That's very interesting. So first tell us, how did you get into writing as a career? I know writing is something that many people love doing and they fear doing because it could be very difficult to make a career out of it.
I've been writing since, I could read. My parents always, encouraged me to read instead of, watching TV. And my dad studied journalism, as did his mother, my grandmother. So it's always kind of been in my blood. And I've always been fascinated with stories and learning about different characters and kind of shaping narratives. So in college, I was a microbiology major, but ended up doing really well in an English class, and got a request for a meeting with the department chair of the literature department, and I thought, oh great, he probably thinks I plagiarized a paper or something. So as it turns out, he was taking a couple students to London for the summer to study Shakespeare, and he invited me along for the trip and asked if I would be interested in searching my major and pursuing writing from like a scholarly approach. And I was easily bribed, by the glamour of London. So I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. So that was in 2008, and then every summer of college after that, I was in London again studying Shakespeare. So from there, I, kind of developed my critical skills, and then in 2010, I did a fellowship in Washington, D.C. through the University of Texas system, where I interned at a local lifestyle magazine, and that was my first foray into journalism. And I loved it. I liked writing about, not characters written on the page, but characters that live their lives every day on the street. So I got into journalism, moved back home to graduate, and helped start a magazine in El Paso called The City, and I served as co-founder and senior editor. And then I thought, I think I really want to do this. So I applied to graduate school at Georgetown for journalism, was accepted, and then during my coursework, I've done internships at National Geographic and Slate, and then last May was hired by Rolling Stone, which sort of like springboarded me to start freelancing for other magazines like Filter and Elle, and and still with Slate.
Look, you have a dream job to a lot of people.
It's like a dream job to me too. Every day I'm like, do I really get to do this cool stuff?
Right, and so people are going to want to know how to do that, and they probably ask you all the time, how do you get into this? How did you do this? How did you start? And so you did it through university and then internships, and then got into freelance writing.
Right, and it was a lot of hustling. While I was at National Geographic, I also started writing for a local live music blog in D.C. called DC Music Live, and through that I was able to get so many clips and meet a lot of people. And it was just a tiny little local music blog, but DC is such a hub for music. I was able to talk to really big bands as they were coming through for tour and like playing shows like at the 930 clubs and stuff. So that helps develop a relationship and a rapport within the music industry. And by the time Rolling Stone came along, I'd already had experience writing about bands that they had already been writing about for years.
And so some of that work, I assume, is free. If not low paying, it's free. And so you probably did a lot of articles and writing and blogging and things, and just for free, just to practice your craft, show what you could do, and open doors.
Totally. The internships at Slate, National Geographic were both unpaid, and DC Music Live doesn't pay at all. We just get, concert tickets and access, which was fine with me at the time.
So how important do you say blogging is for people today who I know I work with so many business owners and people that maybe they start a blog and they're like, oh, well, it didn't go anywhere, and then they stop.
I think it's crucial, especially in terms of business, because as soon as a client or customer gets interested in a business, the first thing they're going to do is Google. And in the age of technology today, if you don't have a web presence, people won't trust you. And so by having a blog or, something, you get kind of, it's a feeler. You get to see who this person or company is and kind of assess before meeting or, making your decision if you want to work with this person.
And wouldn't you agree that people, whether they participated or not, these days actually have a web presence, but you should take an active hand in creating your own web presence instead of letting others out there decide that for you?
Absolutely, because you're going to be working with people and you want to, present yourself as, genuinely as possible, and it's your voice and your brand.
Right, and by web presence, I mean people write about other people. They write about what they see and who they interact with.
Absolutely.
And comment on that, and that creates an online identity for that third party.
Yeah,
totally.
we often say that if you are not in charge of your own web presence, whereas, like I said, it's blogging for yourself, hiring someone, learning how to do it, hiring someone to help you, if you don't create your own identity, other people are going to create it for you.
Right, no, absolutely.
And it's interesting that you answered the question like that, because I actually thought when Lisa just asked you about the importance of a blog, you'd take it from the perspective of showcasing your writing, but you didn't at all. You said this for a business identity, you're going to want that. Other people, third parties, are going to want that, and you're dead on right with that.
How did you get out of El Paso in the fact that many people have dreams and aspirations, and from what I've seen, not many take the next step that you did?
It was tough. I had a great job with the magazine. My friends are there, my family's still there, and it was a lot to leave behind, but I just had, this dream of, making something of myself, or seeing like, okay, I did this pretty well when I was, I was 23 at the time, and it's like, let's see if I can do more or be better, and I wanted to be the best writer I could be for my readers, and unfortunately El Paso didn't have much to offer for me anymore, and I have a really great group of really creative friends who are all, thinking about, leaving and pursuing these other artistic ambitions, and all of us ended up kind of migrating to the East Coast. I'm here in D.C., and a couple others are in New York, so it's nice having some sort of like a home base on the East Coast with them. Without that kind of support, I don't know how I would survive.
You've written for Rolling Stone magazine, Slate, Elle, Filter magazine. I mean, so many more. What are some of your best articles that you're most proud of?
Let me see. Probably one of my favorite stories was for Rolling Stone that I did back in September, and it was over Labor Day. I got to go to Philadelphia to cover the Made in America Music Festival, and it was the first time they kind of trusted me, to go to a music festival and write a review, and it was absolutely amazing. I mean, I had no idea, but I was backstage the entire time. I thought, I'd be participating rather than, doing heavy, interviews and stuff, so I got to, meet Beyonce and interview Phoenix and have this crazy, hot day that I was working and thinking and enjoying the music. And then, after I was done, probably at about 2:00, I had to go back to my hotel and write the story, and it was a little daunting because my copy was due at 7 o'clock that morning, and it was so overwhelming that I hadn't even processed it, and then I had to think, like, okay, well, how am I going to write about this for millions of people to read?
How important and stressful are deadlines?
Deadlines, I mean, I love them and I hate them. I always say that, like, don't give me time, give me a deadline. Otherwise, I'm not going to do something. You know, and, I mean, maybe it's just, like, creative, like, artistic into the perverse. Like, I like pushing buttons and seeing, like, all right, how long can I push it and stuff? And I produce the best work under a tight deadline. And I meet my deadlines all the time.
I think many people work that way, Erin. I have a saying that goes around that if you want something done, give it to a busy person.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because then you're just like, okay, here, just let me take care of it so I can move on to the next task. Because otherwise you're like, well, I can put it off for, you know, a day or two, and it never gets done.
Okay, I want to get... Go ahead.
I want to go back and revisit a little bit because I think people are really interested in this part, and you probably would agree from your daily life. The whole interaction with musicians and rock stars and things like that. Are a lot of your articles, and you have hundreds of them that you've written on the music industry, but they're not always face-to-face with people, or are they? Are some of them just from information that you gather from other sources? How do those typically come about?
It depends. If it's a news story, sometimes, say, like Rolling Stone will get an exclusive. We'll be the original source. Other times, it's aggregated from other sources. So, like, we'll pick up a story from, you know, Consequence of Sound or Spin and, like, vice versa. But those usually don't involve quotations, but the interviews are always, like, directly through me. Sometimes they're in person, which I prefer because it's just easier to read someone and get a sense of who they are and get you to trust them. But most of the time they're over the phone, which is, you know, a different animal in and of itself because you have someone usually on a tour bus, they're distracted, they're tired. I'm just, you know, a floating voice, you know, that they're probably never going to see or meet. So, you know, they don't really feel comfortable opening up. So usually with phone interviews, I spend probably, I'd say at least 5 minutes sort of telling them a little bit about myself, like trying to make it as conversational as possible.
And do you find as you get more experience along the way, more of your assignments are in-person assignments?
Yeah, it's usually it just depends on the availability of the band. So if say one of my editors wants a story out about a certain band and they're in the area that I'm in within the next 3 days, like great. Otherwise, it'll be done over the phone.
And so let's continue on some of the other articles. I know you said Rolling Stone was one, and you've done many articles. So let's give us some more articles that you have done that people may not know about you, that you have been passionate about.
Let me see. I did one for Elle. It was my first one, and it was really, really, you know, crazy. I had just kind of gotten brought on to Elle's team, and I was going to be in LA in December, and the National was nominated for a Grammy, and they were going to be playing this tiny little show for a radio station on top of the roof of the W Hotel with like 6 of my other favorite bands. And I thought, oh man, you know, I'd love to cover that, and I've been wanting to interview the National forever. So then I asked my editor, and she's like, yeah, if you can get an interview with them, go for it. So I ended up, you know, getting approved for that. Doing the interview, it was my first interview in LA, and, you know, we were at this party, and there were people from, like, Laguna Beach and, like, The Hills and, you know, all those reality shows, and, like, E! News was there. Like, what am I into? You know, I was completely, you know, I'm used to just being backstage. So I got to sit down with Brian, the lead singer, Matt, sorry, and talk about it, and I asked him, I was like, you know, what's it like being nominated for a Grammy on Saturday in New York, and now you're, you know, in LA playing this show for people? And he was like, you know, it doesn't matter. So I'm like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, you know, the Grammys don't mean very much to me. And I'm like, you know, hey man, you know, I really like you. I don't want to make you seem like a jerk when I write this. Like, what is something that means something to you? And he told me this lovely story about how he was walking down the streets of New York, and he was stopped by a woman who wanted to show him her wedding band. and inscribed on the inside of the band were some of his lyrics. And he was like, that's the sort of thing that makes me pause and makes me appreciate what I am and what I do. He's like, it's that connection, it's that reaching people. He's like, I'm not in this, to get awards or, critical recognition. He's like, it's nice. He's like, but what you want is a connection. And I just thought, that was such a lovely thought, and that's what I want with my readers, is to make them, pause and read something and think, yeah, I feel like that too sometimes. And my hope for that story is that the woman with the wedding band read the story, or, found it, or someone showed it to her so she could see that just as much as he's affected her life, she's affected his.
Erin, I've heard you quote yourself as saying something like, I'm not fun to go to a concert with because I'm taking notes.
Yeah, no, I'm terrible. I take it very, very seriously, like much to the chagrin of my, friends when they're like, hey, let's go to a concert, like this band's in town. And, for most people it's fun, but for me, I get, it's work mode. So when I go to a show, it's like me studying for a test. I'm writing down the set list, taking notes, like observing the behavior of the crowd and of the band and stuff. And
even if you're not hired, even if you're not on assignment.
I try not to. When I'm on assignment, I usually don't take anyone. But when I'm with my friends, I still kind of get into that sort of like observational mode where I don't talk very much. I'm just, watching kind of probably creepily. My friends are like, relax. Like, yeah, you're right. Or, a new song will come out or something, and I tell my friends, like, oh, yeah, and I spit out the history, and they're like, it's okay, we don't need to know the biography. We just want to enjoy the song. Okay, like, snap out of that, like, critical train of thought.
And just so you know, that will go away if one day you're out of writing about concerts, because I used to work on film set, and then for a little while afterwards, when I watch a movie, I would imagine it'd be some intimate scene or something, and I could just visualize 20 crew members standing around the just outside the frame. Right. And I would watch movies like that, and it would ruin it for a while, but it went away soon after.
Oh, good. That's really comforting to know.
Erin, what are some of your plans for the future? You certainly got a good jump start. I know you're still young and you have decades in front of you. What are some of your plans for your own goals?
Well, right now I'm just trying to finish up, this graduate program, but my goal is, like, immediately is to move to LA as soon as I get a job over there. I've done so much time on the East Coast. I'm eager to, test out my skills on the West Coast, and, it'll be a new adventure, and I want to explore more narrative nonfiction writing.
Great, too. All great stuff. Any last questions for you, Brian?
How is it being on the other side of an interview?
It's fun. I like it. It's kind of strange for me, but it's like, oh, I don't have to, I can answer questions, not like take the reins. This is fun. I'll do it again.
Well, thanks. Well, we welcome you to California. I know one of your goals is to get out of here, so we'll put that vision out to the universe. So, well, thanks, Erin.
Oh, no, thank you guys.
Thank you, Erin.